Studies Section 5, Principles of Human Growth and Development. Introduction. There is a set of principles that underpins the pattern and process of growth and development. These principles or characteristics describe typical development as a predictable and orderly process. That is, we can predict how most children will develop and that they will develop at the same rate and at about the same time as other children. Human growth and development in process. Although there are individual differences in children's personalities, activity levels, and timing of developmental milestones, such as ages and stages, the principles of development have universal patterns. Principles of development. Learning outcomes. At the end of this study, you should be able to 1. Discuss the principles of development. 2. Discuss an overview of physical growth. 3. Discuss overview of development. 1. Development proceeds from the head downward. This is called the cephalocaudal principle. This principle describes the direction of growth and development. According to this principle, the child gains control of the head first, then the arms, and then the legs. Infants develop control of the head and the face movement within the first 2 months after birth. In the next few months, they are able to lift themselves up by using their arms. By 6 to 12 months of age, infants start to gain leg control and may be able to crawl, stand, or walk. Coordination of arms always precedes coordination of legs. 2. Development proceeds from the center of the body outward. This is the principle of proximodistal development that also describes the direction of development. This means that the spinal cord develops before outer part of the body. The child's arms develop before the arms, and the arms and feet develop before the fingers and toes. Fingers and toes muscles used in fine motor dexterity are the last to develop in physical development. 3. Development depends on maturation and learning. Maturation refers to the sequential characteristic of biological growth and development. The biological changes occur in sequential order and give children new abilities. Changes in the brain and nervous system account largely for maturation. These changes in the brain and nervous system help children to improve in thinking, cognitive, and motor physical skills. Also, children must be mature to a certain level before they can progress to new skills, readiness. For example, a 4-month-old cannot use language because the infant's brain is not mature enough to allow the child to talk. Also, a child can't write or draw until he has developed the motor control to hold a pencil or crayon. Maturational patterns are innate, that is, genetically programmed. The child's environment and the learning that occurs as a result of the child's experiences largely determine whether the child will reach optimal development. 4. Development proceeds from the simple, concrete to the more complex. Children use their cognitive and language skills to reason and solve problems. For example, learning relationships between things, how things are similar, or classification is an important ability in cognitive development. The cognitive process of learning how an apple and orange are alike begins with the most simplistic or concrete thought of describing the two. Seeing no relationship, a preschool child will describe the object according to some property of the object, such as color. Such a response would be an apple is red or green and an orange is orange. An apple and orange are round, and an apple and orange are alike because you eat them are typical responses of 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. As children develop further in cognitive skills, They are able to understand a higher and more complex relationships between objects and things. That is, that an apple and orange belong to the class of fruit. The child cognitively is then capable of classification. 5. Growth and development is a continuous process. As a child develops, he or she adds to the skills already acquired, and the new skills become the basis for further achievement and mastery of skills. Most children follow a similar pattern. Also, one stage of development lays the foundation for the next stage of development. For example, in motor development, there is a predictable sequence of development that occur before walking. The infant lifts and turns the head before he or she can turn over. Infants can move their limbs, arms, and legs before grasping an object. Mastery of climbing stairs involves increasing skills from holding on to something to walking alone. By the age of 4, most children can walk up and down stairs with alternating feet. As in maturation, in order for children to write or draw, they must have developed the manual hand control to hold a pencil and crayon. 6. Growth and development proceed from the general to specific. In motor development, the infant will be able to grasp an object with the whole hand before using only the thumb and forefinger. The infant's first motor movements are very generalized, undirected, and reflexive, waving arms or kicking before being able to reach or creep towards an object. Growth occurs from large muscle movements to more refined smaller muscle movements. 7. There are individual rates of growth and development. Each child is different and the rate at which individual children grow is different. Although the patterns and sequences for growth and development are usually the same for all children, the rate at which individual children reach developmental stages will be different. Understanding this fact of individual differences in rate of development should cause us to be careful about using and relying on age and stage characteristics to describe or label children. Some children are more active while others are more passive. This does not mean that the passive child will be less intelligent as an adult. There is no validity to comparing one child's progress with or against another child. An overview of physical growth. The rate of development of certain personal characteristics of a given child also are not uniform. For example, a child's intellectual development may progress faster than his emotional or social development. An understanding of the principles of development helps us to plan appropriate activities as well as stimulating and enriching experiences for our children. The knowledge also provides a basis for understanding how to encourage and support young children's learning. Understanding the growth and development of the human organism requires an understanding of nature and nurture and the complex interplay between the two. Growth implies a physical change, usually resulting from either an increase in cell number or cell size. Development, a change or modification in a person's capacity to function. The enhancement of a skill, age-related norms for growth and development must be interpreted in context. The pattern of growth and development is much more important than the particular size of a child or the particular collection of developmental skills the child may possess at any given point in time. Growth in young people occurs in the following pattern. 1. Relatively rapid growth during infancy with a gradual deceleration until about the 4th year of life. 2. A slow but uniform period of growth until puberty. 3. A prominent adolescent growth spurt. 4. A relatively gradual decrease in the rate of growth until completion of maturity, usually after age 20. The difference in the size of adults between populations depends on differences in the gene pools of those populations as well as differences in environmental factors. There are differences in the size of Asians when compared to Caucasians, for example. However, Asians who grow up in the United States are generally taller and larger than Asians who grow up in Asia. Thus, genetic differences that may exist between these two populations can be mitigated by environmental factors. 1. Factors which affect growth are genetic factors. Maternal illnesses during pregnancy, diabetes, endocrine diseases, diseases which affect placental sufficiency, etc. can affect fetal growth even when these illnesses are adequately treated. Maternal and family socio-economic disadvantages during and after pregnancy, poor nutrition, lack of access to prenatal care, poor education, and inadequate treatment of maternal illnesses can affect maternal health. These factors thus also affect the size of the newborn and usually continue to affect the size of the child after birth. Maternal and family social-emotional problems during childhood. These factors, which may have affected the size of the newborn, can have an ongoing effect on the infant child's growth. Notable examples of this occur in Eastern European orphanages, where staff shortages result in minimal stimulation for the infant and children cared for at the orphanage. Statistically speaking, the most important factor affecting a child's growth is their size at birth and the factors that contributed to this. These factors tend to persist and thus have an ongoing effect on growth. 2. Adolescent physical growth and development. Psychologically speaking, adolescence emerges as early as age 8 girls or 9 boys, and as late as 14 in boys and girls. Overview of development. The two major events occurring during this time are a rapid increase in height and weight, and the development of sexual characteristics. Tenor staging is a method of evaluating the sexual maturity of an adolescent and is based upon the appearance of secondary sexual characteristics, breast development in girls, penis and testicular development in boys, and pubic hair development in both. Sexual maturity is complete by the end of the teenage years. Brain growth and development. Nearly one half of the brain's postnatal growth is achieved by the end of the first year, as witnessed by the impressive increase in head circumference. The enormous increase in head size is primarily accounted for by growth of the cerebral cortex. New cortical cells are added, neurons as well as dendritic cells. More connecting links are created and cells become larger. Myelination of brain cells, development of a shift around each brain cell, is an important reason for the increase in head size as well. As different parts of the nervous system undergo myelination, the infant toddler is capable of increasingly complex motor, verbal, and cognitive functions. The pattern of myelination results in a very predictable pattern of motor development. 1. Cephalad to caudal, head to tail. 2. Proximal to distal, from thorax to periphery. 3. Development in spheres other than the motor sphere is also predictable, but is not as clearly associated with myelinization patterns. Development is divided into 4 major areas. 1. Motor. 2. Speech, language. 3. Cognitive. 4. Social, emotional. Summary of study section 5. At the end of this study section, you have learned about the principles of development. 1. Development proceeds from the head downward. 2. Development proceeds from the center of the body outward. 3. Development depends on maturation and learning. 4. Development proceeds from the simple concrete to the more complex. 5. Growth and development is a continuous process. 6. Growth and development proceed from the general to specific. 7. There are individual rates of growth and development. An overview of physical growth. An overview of development. This is the end of study section 5. Thanks for listening.